In emotional processes, there are three fields: inner experience, outer expression, and the boundary between the two. In infancy, before conditioning has really calcified our patterns of reaction, the boundary between inner and outer is flimsy or non-existent. We show what we feel. This is perfectly healthy and desirable. The baby or infant tantrum is powerfully strong, but soon dissipated and exhausted. As we learn through the responses of our parents and caregivers how to adapt to our environment, we learn to inhibit our spontaneous feelings as they arise. We learn to contain them and repress their outward expression. Over time, these responses to emotion create concealment, containment, shame, guilt, and of course, neurosis and self-persecution. We feel we are bad for having unacceptable emotions because our parents and caregivers couldn't handle their natural outward release. Expression of feeling is not experience of feeling. Crying is not sadness. It is releasing sadness. The screaming tantrum is not experiencing anger, it is expressing anger. The psychophysical organism is an incredibly wise, self-regulating, self-governing complex of healthy adaptation, so long as we get out of its way and trust and allow it. This was one of the liberating insights of the Human Potential Movement, a collection of new therapies and approaches to the education of well-being and wholeness that emerged about 50 years ago. Children of the Second World War parents embraced the catharsis of anger, fear, sadness, and hurt with enthusiasm and zeal. We had learned Stoicism to endure suffering from our parents who had experienced so much. Their legacy to us was that experiencing and releasing emotions was counterproductive, that they bequeathed us a war effort of our own, the war on the inner world of emotions. In the aftermath of the counterculture, liberating sexuality, intellectual freedom, and artistic experimentation, we rode on the waves of emotional expansion, acceptance, and freedom until we hit the metallic, brazen cynicism and materialism of the commercial 1980s. Suddenly everybody wanted to be a healer, it seemed, a therapist or a complementary alternative practitioner, and the institutes and the short-term trainings were born. In those days, therapists in training would diagnose themselves in their therapy sessions with me. They would develop their own explanations and disciplines of catharsis and personal change. By the time we hit the 1990s, the transformation was complete. In the public mind, therapy was synonymous with self-indulgence, weakness, and the inability to cope with life. The stiff upper lip of repression reasserted itself in the popular mind. Those that really needed to relearn self-regulating and trusting emotional processes were now securely hidden beneath their professional facades. Today, so many practitioners are labouring under the avoidance of their own personal life issues. There is no more thorough, effective concealment than becoming a therapist who lives and heals inauthentically through his or her patients, clients or pupils. This vicarious strategy results in paucity and unfulfillment for everyone and supports the endemic repression of emotions in collective humanity. First, now a disclaimer. I, like you, I hope, love to witness the diversity and the dignity of the human spirit, the kindness in human eyes, the small acts, the tenderness and attention between families and friends shown in public and in the domestic environment. Human beings inspire awe and wonder. But in the modern era, we are mostly deeply unhappy, and we may not even know it. The many shades of anger predominate in the psyche of collective humanity. Fear and ego processes are so absolutely present as to be unnoticed. Domestic violence and depression are rife, so-called mental disorders more common than ever before in human history. We have more, we know more, we should be able to love more, enjoy more, and live more wisely, more enlightened, more compassionately, kindly, and contentedly than we ever did before. And yet humanity is essentially miserable and discontented. We have succumbed to fear, desire, supporting the ego processes of imagined protection, separation, division. Our sense of individual separate identity remains stronger than ever. This is the age of the individual self. We emerged out of the 20th century, which has been called the century of the self, into the 21st century, which presents us with massive, intense, spiritual and sacred challenges. Only if there's a spiritual revolution in the heart of humanity can the inevitable destruction of humanity and its world be avoided. Humanity has lived in the energy centers of anger and fear for too long. It is time for humans to realize the heart, the love energies, the subtle etheric energies of compassion, kindness, enlightened vision, empathy. Emotionally intelligent humans know now that separate identity gives rise to separation. Separation gives rise to division and prejudice, division to conflict, conflict to oblivion. In the heart, there is no separation, no division or prejudice. There is only truth, compassion, and peace. The human collective depends on the individuals that comprise it. Your individual relationship to anger and humanity's need to rise into the heart are not merely connected, they're the same. Cultivate awareness, mindfulness, and compassion. When you feel angry, don't suppress, but equally don't indulge. You cannot afford the sneer of disgust, the slammed door, the raised voice, the slapped table, the stamping foot, the broken china, the insult, the swearing, the tight face, the sickening lurch of depression, the deadened heart, the tense muscles, the raised fist, the tirade of retribution, the withdrawal, the refusal of life, fear, control, temper. Because if you do, we are lost. In one moment of hate, you've let go into destruction, and with destruction comes the dissolution of the sacred. Every moment is sacred. Every act is sacred. Every face, expression, heartbeat, and breath is sacred. Human beings are sacred. The worlds are sacred. Sacredness is our binding, our duty to respond, to preserve and protect the forces of love, existence, and divinity. Our ability, our empowerment to love and brighten, to not give in to pain and suffering, and reaction to our animalistic instincts, to fear and anxiety, panic and control, distrust and cynicism,